Hey, everybody, welcome to Beyond the Cast. Today, I'm so excited to have a man that up until he showed up today, I don't know who he is. I met him through my buddy, Dwayne Ludwig. Actually, Dwayne's over here sitting behind the camera today, just kind of hanging out. But Trevor Peek, thanks for coming on today, brother. I appreciate it.
And thanks for having me. I look forward to, getting to know you and doing this podcast with you. It's a really cool stuff for me.
I'm excited to hear your story, but I think, the connecting point and you got a big fight coming up this weekend.
Yes, sir.
You're fighting Charlie Campbell?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay, it's Charlie, right?
Yep.
And you guys have like the same record. I saw that not the same record. I'm sorry. You guys have the same amount of pro fights. I think you're both at 10 fights.
Yes, sir.
But you're 9-1 and he's 8-2.
Yep.
And I watched, was it Gonzalez on the UFC fight night?
Yep, that was my UFC debut, yes, sir.
That was your debut?
Yep.
Dude, like I saw you when you were coming up to him at like the end, you're like, you're throwing straight, jabs, rights, and then you're doing this hammer fist.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, where did you learn that from? Or is that's just the fight in you? Or
I used to street fight a lot and stuff, and
sure.
I guess it probably come from that. But I had started throwing it on a punching bag, just goofing off whenever I was kind of working the bag by myself, and every time I threw it, I was like, man, I can generate so much power with this thing. And, I wasn't part of the game plan with the Gonzalez fight. It just kind of come out. But, it's kind of, I've been something I'm known for. So it's been pretty cool that, all these fighters have fought all these years, and then I go in there and have one fight, and then I've kind of, put something that was memorable to the fans. So I think it's pretty cool.
Well, you got all that experience though on Dana's series, The Contender, right?
Yes, sir.
So how was that? Like, how was that whole experience? Obviously, you looked pretty comfortable, in that fight with Gonzalez, but like, how was that whole experience for you?
The Contender series experience wasn't a good one for me at all.
Okay.
I wasn't working with a dietitian or anything during that time. I hadn't flew on a plane a whole lot in my life, and the day before the fight and the day of the fight, I had a case of vertigo. So I was experiencing like dizzy spells, like off and on throughout the whole day. And whenever I got to the venue to fight on the Contender series, I was actually like dizzy, and it got me in my head. And it's almost like quicksand. You start getting in your head a little bit, and you just keep on getting worse and worse. And that first round, I almost felt like I wasn't even really in the fight. And Mike Beltran hollered at me at the end, and he was like, Trevor, I'm fixing to stop the fight. And then I kind of come back to my senses, and then I landed a right knee to a left hook at the end of the first round, and it kind of reset the pace for me. And then between rounds, I kind of come back and felt a lot better the second round and bounced back with a nice comeback victory. But yeah, that Contender series experience was a rough one for me, but I'm glad I got through it. It taught me a lot about myself,
Yeah. Well, I think that, you see guys that like, it's been a long time, but like when I was in, in the fighting world and, got to see, a lot of our friends fight, locally. And then even like in UFC, you see guys that have like that, I don't know what you would call it. It's almost, it's almost like the dog in them, right? Like when things are off or whatever. And that's what I saw with the hammer fist. I'm like, that's just probably complete or you're just improvising.
Yes,
and just doing everything you can just to, try to put them away. But that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you've been here since February. We'll catch up to that, but like part of like I kind of just want to hear your story, man, from like the beginning, even before fighting. Where you grew up. I can hear that Southern accent in there and too, and all that, and the sirs and all that. I appreciate it, but like where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on Sand Mountain. It's a northeast corner of Alabama in a little town called Pisgah, and I grew up without, my dad wasn't really around. He was off in the military and stuff. And then later on in life, I was blessed for him to, get back home. And on up in my teenage years, man, I really started getting really wild. I was just partying as much as I could, drinking. And it just progressively got worse and worse. And by the time I was out of high school, man, I was a full-blown, like, just drug addict, alcoholic. I was such not a good person. I was an intravenous drug user for, several years. I was going down a very bad path. I've been arrested, I think 16 times it is. And wow. I was just, rough off, man. And then later on in life, God started slowly getting a hold of me and I started feeling a lot of conviction and, a lot of guilt for like the drugs and stuff that I was doing and everything. And, May 24th, 2017, I had my first encounter with God, And, I didn't really get my life in order then, but I started trying to. And on July 27th, 2017, I was under the influence. I ran a stop sign, got T-boned by a lady. It about killed her, my friend that was in the vehicle with me, and myself. And yeah, man, I just after that accident, man, I was in jail, and I was like, oh, I'm done for this time. They're gonna send me away, and I ended up getting out. They put me on community corrections for a year, so I was confined to the state of Alabama for a year, and I couldn't go anywhere, and pretty much was training in my grandfather's shed by myself for my whole first year of my pro career. And then like it's been cool, man. The fighting and all that, it's helped me out, but ultimately, man, God, I mean, Jesus, he's the reason that I'm got anything in life right now. But I
Yeah.
guess I got into the fighting when I was around 15 years old. We was going around fighting all the time and stuff. Me and a couple of my buddies just parking lot fights and stuff. And a couple of my friends, they actually trained. And one of my buddies called me up and was like, "Hey man, you wanna go fight?" And I thought he was talking about a parking lot and everything. And I was like, "Yeah man, I'll go fight." And he said something. And I was like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And he was like, "No, it's gonna be up here in Rainsville." Like he told me the venue, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, it's going to be in a cage like the UFC does. And I said, in front of people, like I was like, I don't know about that, man. He was like, dude, you're a natural fighter, man. You'll do great. And I said, what I got to do? And he told me to get a piece of paper signed by one of my parents. I went and talked to my dad, and I went up there and fought that night, and I beat the crap out of that kid. And then I actually won two more without ever really training at all. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with MMA. But like I said, I was still so wild and still so far out there that I didn't really pursue it. Like I just kept doing drugs, kept drinking and stuff. And
How old were you when you did this?
I was 15 when I took my first fight.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at 19, I fought again. And I got beat by a rear naked choke. And I was like, man, I'm never doing this again until I train, because it finally caught up to me. And, later on in life, I kept getting wilder and wilder, and then that accident happened. And before that accident happened, when we was still strung out on drugs and everything, I would sit around and talk to my friends and everything, and I'd be like, I feel like I could make it to the UFC. If I could ever just, quit being a bad person and get my life together, I feel like I could really make it. And I had them conversations so many times, and I kind of sounded like a broken record with it, honestly. And a couple of my buddies was like, "Man, why don't you train?" And I was just like, "I can't control myself," and I really couldn't during that time. I had a serious anger issue. I mean, I was all the time fighting. I was fighting, sometimes multiple times in one weekend. So after I got in that vehicular accident, I really I moved in with my grandpa. I did construction work, and then I just come home, beat on a punching bag, and then that same friend that I had mentioned called me up when I was 15. Me and him met up and went to a karate dojo, and we talked to that gentleman, and they ended up giving us a spot in the back to train at. And we went up there and pretty much just sparred every day. We didn't have a coach or anything. And then one thing led to another, man. I started, God started putting people in my life that was real beneficial to me for the MMA and everything. And, yeah, man, it's been incredible. It's
Yeah.
been really incredible. But everything I have going on, man, is just because of God's grace.
Well, I'm letting you talk, but there's so many questions that I have in like those stories. So if we can back up a little bit, what was it for you? Like, when you started kind of getting like, even before getting into trouble, like if you don't mind diving into that, do you know where some of that pain and hurt came from? Is there something, or was it just a lifestyle thing?
Yeah, it was. I don't want to make anybody I care about look bad or anything like that. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
No.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there was some pain behind it. But I mean, a lot of it did kind of just start out as fun. And then it was just buddies going and drinking and stuff. But it kind of quickly got a hold of me. But I was definitely using it to cope. And then, like my high school sweetheart and stuff, me and her kind of busted up. And as far as plans in life, like she was really the only plan I knew that I had, like being with her. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then she got a scholarship and went off. And then I was really lost and broken, for a good while over that and many other things. And I thought the things that was helping me cope was, helping me get through it. But ultimately, I didn't get over all the things that was hurting me until after I quit doing all them things. God started actually, cleansing my heart and my head and making me feel better about everything that I had going on in life. But I was like really a prisoner to it. Like I said, I thought I was, getting through it, covering up my sadness and my emotions, but it just prolonged the healing, really.
Yeah. Do you listen to any books or read books or audiobook stuff? Are you
I mainly just read the Bible. Every once in a while, I'll get into like, maybe some kind of, like how to be successful, or, type
sure?
books like
Yeah,
that. But
self-help
yes,
stuff with
sir.
business. One of the a book that I want to send you. So my wife and I just got back. We went to a like a couples intensive. So I have my oldest son, Aiden, he'll be 21 this fall. And then my younger one who's going off to college, he's 18. So we're going to be empty nesters at a pretty young age, but it's kind of just doing a tune up in the car. But I was supposed to, well, a tune up for me, right? This is my shell. And aside from my belief in my faiths, um, I still think that there's incredible people out there that can help you, like at least understand like where the stuff came from. So the point I'm trying to make is that I've started doing a lot of work on myself over the last 5 years, and it comes out sideways. Like as you're talking, I'm hearing some of my story and yours, but it's like recently I've heard a lot of similar stories, with men, and I like first off, I just want to tell you I'm happy that you're here, not just here doing this podcast. I'm just happy that like God has grabbed you and He set you apart, and you're following that, and I can feel that. But then the other side of it too is that like more than anything, you have this self awareness of like this story as you're going through it. You're just being completely transparent, which I appreciate, and I think men need to do that more. But this book, it's called hashtag Healthy Adult, and without giving too much of it away, the lady, her name's Lori Jean Glass. She's the founder of it, but I went to I went to this retreat. It was an intensive in California about 3 weeks ago with my wife, and we both did our own work, and then we did work where we came together, and I got to see her pain from a young age, even before I was in the picture, and vice versa. And man, there's so many healing factors to that. So like as you start developing that, like even in your fight game, like it can help you be more just self-aware, and then B, it can help you really like for other people when they're going through something, like you can see it out and be a leader and influential in their life. Obviously you're working with one, I would call him one of the best, if not the best in kickboxing, but more than just training with him, I would say physically in the ring, like spiritually, he's an incredible person to be around too. So
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You couldn't have said that any better, man. Yes, sir. That's kind of what I was telling all my friends and stuff back home. Like, I knew, Mr. Ludwig, Dwayne's been a legend for, many, many years. My striking coach back home, he's actually, Dwayne's actually his favorite fighter of all time. Like I knew I was going to come up here and I knew the training was going to be intense and I would just, level up, drastically. But, that this man carries his Bible around everywhere we go, literally, so getting to be around him and, and his family's been, real refreshing to me and my, my walk with God too, just, it's been such a blessing being up here, man,
yeah, I'm
such a
sure.
blessing.
So kind of back to before again we jumped too far ahead. So you went through some things, you started fighting, expressing yourself through fights and all that kind of stuff. But then the drinking, that was also, I would presume, well, there's the adolescence part where kids just want to do that, but it sounds like you took that and drugs to a different level just because you were trying to numb the pain. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And through this time, did you go to church or were you exposed to any of that?
I'd
Or
went to church, several times whenever I was a kid. And then we kind of started going whenever I was, probably around 12 years old, but I was really just going to, there was a pretty girl there and I was kind of going there to hang out with her. But so as far as like a walk with God or anything like that, I didn't really understand it. And I didn't really know if God was, I figured he was real because I'd have been through so much, so many car wrecks, and I've got similar stories with kind of like you was talking about before the podcast with the bullet and stuff. I've got similar stories to that, but like, I didn't know for sure that he was real until that May 24th. You know, whenever I was telling you, I experienced him. I mean, I got a clock tattooed on me with the time 10:05 p.m. because that's what time it was whenever I felt him, and I knew in my heart that it was God, and I knew that he was real. So I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really have a relationship with him throughout my life, and then later on, I had encountered him, and I still drifted off a little bit from May to July.
Yeah.
But then that car wreck happened, and I promised him if he'd get me through everything that I'd be a lot better of a person.
Yeah. Well, and with that, these car accidents, did you take on any like serious injuries when you were in them, or just
No, not from the car wrecks. I mean,
isn't that incredible?
yeah,
Like it does. I think I don't know what the numbers are, but I think they say if you're going like 15 miles an hour and someone's going 15 miles an hour, it's 30 miles per hour of like, and it doesn't take much, right, for people to get ejected out of a car or whatnot.
yeah.
Just hearing all the stuff you've been through, I'm just thinking, I'm just focusing on the car accidents, aside from the fights and all the other stuff that you were in, but like just to see how much your body was spared for potentially a bigger purpose.
Yes, sir.
I believe in that kind of stuff for
I do
sure.
too. Now I did go through some things that was just real heck on my body. Like for instance, my buddies, I was drinking at a party one time and I'd passed out, and my buddies put me in the back of their truck. And on the way home, I slept walk out of the back of that truck, and all I had on was a pair of, I think I had jeans on. I didn't have a shirt or anything, man, and it like to have killed me. I mean, the road we was on, the speed limit was 55, and my buddies was drunk, and they definitely don't drive the speed limit. And I've got pictures. I'll show you guys after this podcast, man. But yeah, it ripped my nose open. I mean, I had all my fingertips was burned off from the road. All my back, probably like 70-80% of my upper body was road rash. Like, yeah, I've been through several things that was pretty rough. But like all the car wrecks, man, yeah, I pretty much come out unscathed, really.
Right.
Yep.
Well, you've talked about like some of your friends, obviously, we whoever you hang out with is who you are, right? So your buddies probably had their own pain, their own stuff, their own stories. And it sounds like, in certain aspects they were trying to support you and help you, but like were your parents around through this, this crazy time? Like were they trying to step in, or were you just absent from them
I mean,
emotionally, or were you there? Like I guess I'm more asking like what was your support system outside of your friends at that time?
um, I guess the biggest support system I had as far as like really wanting me to like get my life together was my grandpa that I said I moved in with. Like he just, man, he's always the one that bonded me out of jail, man. He's all like he couldn't, so many people tried to tell him to like quit enabling me and stuff, and he did enable me with the party and stuff, but his love was just too strong for me that he couldn't really like turn his back away from me, and I'm so grateful for that. But I mean, I have other grandparents and stuff that, wanted me to do good and everything, but my grandpa, Mr. Bruce Roden, man, I can't thank that guy enough, man. He's done so much for me, man. Like I said, that everybody else had, I won't say they written me off, but they'd kind of just, I was so out there, man. But my grandpa, he always tried to help me, and ultimately, man, I owe him a whole lot.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind answering the question, like when you were fighting, like not obviously the way that you're fighting now, when you're doing the street fights and, being pissed off and all that, like who do you feel like you were like, where was that rage and that anger? Like, do you know was it just a combination of your life and feeling like, why am I here? What's my purpose? I don't know. And I'm pissed off, or was it like directed at somebody specific or?
Um, I guess a combination. I mean, there was some things that was going on. Like I said, I don't want to dive too deep in it,
Sure.
but there were some things that had, kind of made me an angry young man. But I like to fight, man. Too. I mean, it wasn't just the anger. I mean, I was exceptionally good at it. I mean, even long before the training. I mean, whenever I was on the streets, I mean, drinking whatever it was, like I was pretty good at it, and I don't know, it made me feel like I wanted to be the best fighter that ever come off of Sand Mountain. And even street fighting and all that stuff. Like I wanted that was like I was so good at it that I wanted to be known for it, and I was in a bad space during that time as far as like I guess life goals, like, but yeah, there was several things that kind of pushed me in that direction too. But like I said, I was just a wild young man. At the
Sure.
end of the day, I had some wild oats that needed sowed, I guess.
Well, that fight, so you won. You went to this, or your buddy said, "Hey, you want to go fight?" You thought you were going to do a street fight,
Yep.
and you show up and you're in an octagon. You're in a cage,
Yes, sir.
and you're 15 years old, and there's people around, and you win. Like, how was that feeling? What, aside from obviously you're going through your stuff, but how was that feeling just from that standpoint? Were you thinking UFC, or what were some maybe goals or things that you had in your mind?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily thinking UFC during that time. Whenever I took that very first fight, like I had been in several street fights, but I hadn't got into just being just an absolute just madman, wild, crazy person just yet. Like I mean, I had had my fair share of street fights. Don't get me wrong, and I'd already started partying. But when I took that very first fight, I was still somewhat a decent human being, I guess, and that same friend like that I'm talking about, he had a pretty good understanding of the fight game. Like he became a promoter later on in life, and he knew about fights and he knew about talent and stuff. And I was like 14 or 15, and I think I was 15 because I'd already did that fight. And he told me like he was like, and I could tell in his face he meant it. He said if you ever wanted to make a lot of money, Trevor, he said you could do it in the cage. And I'm like, whatever. He's like, I'm serious, man. He said, the way you fight, as crazy as you are and the way you fight, he said, people will pay to watch that. He said, that's what people want to see. Your style is what people's going to pay. He said, you could make a lot of money. And it kind of stuck with me. Like I said, it stuck with me for a long time, but I didn't actually pursue it till like, what was that, 7 years after that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, one of the things that you go back, or you've said it a few times, and it's just kind of like triggering me in a sense. Like, I just want to tell you, you said, when I was a bad person, there's I've dealt with that. I think self-condemnation, especially for when you get to a place where like you've changed things, right? Like you've lived this life of whatever. And I'm like you don't want to shame anybody, but your story is your story, right? Like, no matter where you've come from or who it was, if it was your parents or if it was a loved one, this girl, whatever it is, I think that one of my favorite lines from a movie that I saw, it's like Trevor Peek. This kid asks his dad, who he's had a lot of issues with, they finally start developing a relationship. And he was like, why, what's the difference between good people and bad people? And he goes, son, there's no such thing. There's just people. He goes, and some people make really bad choices and other people make good choices. Change your choices, So I just want to give you that because I know you're a good dude. I can see it, and I can see that you have that. And you're 29,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, I got that right. And then you fight at 155, but you have this humble thing about you, And I think that with that, what I hope is that I think that I know there's a lot of men right now, like between not just young men, but old men that have all these issues and they have all this anger. And depending on how they grew up and, you being down from the South, like, there's that old school mentality where it's like, you know what, take it on the chin and I'm not going to complain or I'm not going to cry about it. But I just want you to know, like it with the right people, with people that you trust, obviously you got Dwayne, you got a great coach, not just a training coach, but like a spiritual coach too. And you got God. Like it's okay to be transparent. I want you, because I think that'll help you. And I think that aside from you being on TV and doing some of the cool stuff that you're about to, embark on, there's just a bigger calling there. There's a bigger purpose, and I think that you could help because there's how many guys out there probably have your story or something similar to mine. And I grew up that way. You don't cry, you don't talk about this, blah blah blah. But as I've started going through work, you don't necessarily talk about the things that you've been through that hurt to shame anybody, but it's almost to meet people where they are. Like you can show them your scars, your battle scars, and they can see that. And but anyway, something for you to think about. I know you didn't ask for it, but I'm just hearing that. And I want you to know you are a good person, and you're just a person, but now it sounds like you're making better choices. So that's awesome.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. But, so, you've been in Colorado since February. How did you feel about the altitude when you got here? You mentioned vertigo, which I've had a
Man,
few friends that have come on hunts, and that vertigo will mess you up.
I'm telling you, man. The very first day we got here, we went straight to Dwayne's place, me and a teammate of mine, and we trained. And I really felt pretty good that first day. I guess it didn't have time to hit. I don't know, but we was pretty cocky about it. Me and my buddy back at the house was like, "Oh man, we're gonna breeze right through this." And then Monday rolled around and felt like I was breathing with a cloth over my face. And it took about, I think, 2 weeks and like 2 days before I finally was like, "Oh, I can breathe. Finally, I can breathe." But I don't know if I've still got even used to it yet. It's different out here.
Sure. Yeah, and then if you come again, I'll in the summertime, he needs to take you up to like Leadville and just go do like a week of running camps. That'll be that's 2 miles above sea level.
Oh wow.
You got a lot of ultra marathon runners, or there have been some fighters that have gone up there just to train at a little higher elevation, or Mount Evans, or well, even just behind his house. He's up in the mountains, so there, you can get close to about 8,900 feet. So with that, like, are you noticing it? Like even between your cardio, what's the training regiment that you've been going through, kind of prepping for this fight?
A lot.
Sure,
My goodness,
let's
man.
hear about it.
I mean, some of Dwayne's warm ups are as intense as a practice I've been to back home. I mean, it's been incredible, man. Like bottom of my feet was bleeding the first few weeks, man. I mean, it's been intense, man. I've been fortunate enough to he's taken me to train with some other legends and stuff, Leister Bowling. We've been fortunate enough to go over to Trevor Whitman's place and work with him, and it's been incredible, man. It's
Yeah.
been intense though. It has been incredibly intense.
There's a lot of, well, Trevor is just like a ninja, with hands and striking and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because like it's been a while, but when I've seen Dwayne train a few times or train people a few times, and the way he thinks about it, obviously I follow him on Insta, so I get to see all that kind of stuff. But it's unbelievable. And then even his leg kicks at his age where he's at, he's still. I think Luke made a post, saying that, this guy still, is still sharp, as a knife with all that kind of stuff. But it's that discipline. It's the pursuit. It's the pursuit of mastering your discipline, and that's one of the things he talked to me about on the podcast when we had him on, which is awesome. So are you naturally just a stand up hands guy, or did you grow up doing wrestling? Obviously I know the street fighting thing, you can be all over the place, but would you say that your hands were your number one thing?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yeah, we didn't on the mountain I'm from. There's no wrestling up there. I mean,
Okay.
you can go down in the valley, and there's a couple of schools that do the wrestling back home. But yeah, even whenever we was kids, we'd talk about wishing that we had a wrestling program. But yeah, I didn't grow up in any kind of anything like that. Now we'd get out in the yard and roll and stuff like that, and I always felt like I was way better than anybody I ever rode with, just messing around out in the yard, But yeah, it was really just a right hand for a long time, man. I mean, I just had a right hand. I couldn't really throw much else, but I mean, it was I
Just
had
keep pairing with the left and then wait for it and then bring it.
no, it was more like eat one and then hit.
Okay.
I didn't even parry. But yeah, man, it's I just the Lord blessed me with a lot of power, even before I learned any kind of body mechanics or anything like that, man. I mean, I was sleeping a lot of folks, and so I mean, it was just I've got a weird touch of death, man. Just an equalizer.
Yeah. So with with like Muay Thai, is this your first time like really training Muay Thai, or working on your leg kicks? Obviously you're doing MMA, but like, did you learn how to throw leg kicks like when you started doing, more of the fighting?
Yes, sir. Yeah, after we I had ventured off to a jiu-jitsu school from that. I told you we all met up at that karate dojo, and I ventured off to a jiu-jitsu school, and they ended up closing that school down, and I went to his other school in Kimball, Tennessee, and I met a gentleman down there named Jeff Powell, and like I said, Dwayne's been his favorite fighter his entire life. So I mean, and he started working with me a good bit and everything, and I felt like I was really, really advancing. And then, later on in life, he tried opening up a gym and went through several injuries, man. I ended up breaking my fibula. As soon as I got that better, I cut my left leg with a chainsaw, and like I just had several things that kind of stacked up against me. And the gym that Jeff had opened, COVID had hit, and he had to close it down. And my time with him's been, pretty like sporadic, not as consistent due to work, debt, on both of our ends. Like just trying to get together's been a little bit challenging. So the consistency and technique hasn't really, I wouldn't say been there as much as I would have hoped for it to have been. But yeah, I've been working on kicks and Muay Thai type stuff, kickboxing for several years now. But getting up here and being able to just I mean, Dwayne follows me to, every practice pretty much. I think he's maybe missed like maybe 2 or 3 practices since I've been up here.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's been, right here walking with us, holding our hands throughout this whole process. So the consistency, just day in, day out, the repetition has been incredible, man. It's been so incredible.
So you mentioned your buddy that came out here. Is he part of your team? Like when you, or like, does he travel with you? Is he your sparring partner or?
Yes, sir. I would say he's my main training partner. His name's Torres Finney. He actually just fought on the Contender series this past year. He won. Actually got a second round finish, but didn't get a contract awarded to him. But he's a stud, man. He's probably the strongest guy I ever rode with. He's a beast. I mean, he'll be in the UFC pretty soon. I feel like. I think he'll get another shot on the Contender series this year, and I think he'll be in. But he's a monster, man.
How did you like training with Leister?
It's cool, man.
Yeah.
I wished we'd have got to go over there a little bit more. He had his boy and them was wrestling in the state tournament, and then they went to I want to say they went to Mexico, and then they just got back in the States from somewhere. I can't remember where they was at. They was gone for a few weeks. So, but it was intense over there, man. That guy knows his stuff for sure.
Yeah, well, there's that component, and that's where MMA is so tricky. Depending on, if you stand up and you want to do that, but then you got a guy that keeps taking you down because you're socking him up or kicking him. So if he knows the ground game, it's such a chess match all the time. It's fun to watch, and that's where like you've seen a lot of guys come through Colorado because of the quality level of coaching that
Yeah.
we have here. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, this place is I knew there was some good fighters and some good training up here, man, but I didn't realize like around Colorado, Denver area that it was such a hub for MMA, man. There's so many good gyms and high level coaches around here. And one thing too that I've noticed about since I've been up here is like it seems like the surrounding gyms they work together better than they do back home. And
Sure.
and I was kind of talking to my coaches back home and stuff, and I think the reasoning is like up here, like most of the fighters, like it seems like they're fighting on a bigger stage, even if it's not UFC or anything like that, that they're at least fighting on like LFA, stuff like that. And it seems like they're kind of having to rely on each other more for the work. Whereas back home, we're still kind of fighting each other.
Yeah.
So we're kind of having to train in our own gyms instead of coming together and all meeting in the same room for at least sparring, which I'm hoping maybe one of these days, back home they'll kind of get on board with that, because I think it's healthy and good for everybody to have all these bodies to move with.
No, for sure. And like, so I used to run these MMA gyms, LA Boxing, probably about 20 years ago, or a little over that. And with that, we dealt with a lot of that. It was like, whose gym are you going to? And then, you felt like you were, cheating on somebody if you went to this gym or whatever. And like seeing guys like Cody Donovan, Dwayne, Vinny Lopez, and some of these guys that aren't fighting anymore, but they're really good coaches. And then even like Trevor, there's like this unity. Yeah. But I think it's also, it's cultivated from, they grew up all in that here and they got to see that. So that's my outside opinion. Not that it really matters, but it's good to see this cohesiveness. And there is a lot of talent out here and a lot of guys come here, for the elevation. And obviously there's just some amazing coaches.
Yes, sir.
So when you were on the Contender series, like talk to me about that process. Like, you're in there with a bunch of guys. Like I used to work with a ton of, fighters from a very, just getting into it, amateur, and then guys that were in the UFC, and that, all great guys, but I also felt like between, your story, like backstory, my backstory, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of guys that had stuff, and they were pissed off. So I'm always interested to hear, like, I guess it's technically like a giant fight camp that's being publicized and recorded all the time, but how was that whole experience?
It was, like I said, it was parts of it was good, but a lot of it was just kind of scary and bad, man.
What do you
I
mean scary? You don't strike me as a guy that would.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say scary as like scared of the individual, man. I reckon I'd fight anybody in the world, but just scared like I mean, my whole future's on the line. Like I've worked so hard to get here, and I'm sitting here and I'm dizzy, and I'm sitting in my hotel before we even leave over there. And I'd listened to Donald Cerrone's story the day he fought Connor, and he's like talking about how much he didn't want to fight that day, and I'm sitting in there and I'm like, am I having my Donald Cerrone moment? I'm like, this is the most important fight of my life, and I really want to fight this guy. I just wished I could fight him tomorrow. And I got through it though, man. But I had fought a UFC veteran 4 weeks before this, Kama Worthy. And I had before I fought him, I caught COVID. And I actually fought Kama Worthy with pneumonia. And so as soon as I walked out of the cage, I wasn't even off of the catwalk yet. And they come up to me and was like, hey man, you got a Contender Series fight. And I'm sitting there like my lungs are killing me. My legs are hurt from the just fighting. And I'm like, when is it? I know the Contender Series ain't, but like just a little bit longer. I ain't got but maybe 6 more weeks tops. And they're like, well, we don't know the date yet. And then they called me the next day and was like, it's the beginning of September, second week of September. And I'm like, man, can they push me to the very last week so I can get time to let my lungs heal? I was like, I just went through 3 weeks of just brutalness with my lungs, man, and just fought with my lungs like this. And there's like, no, that's the opportunity. And I reckon Sean Shelby like knew everything I had going on with the COVID and pneumonia and all that stuff. And he pretty well told him, he was like, look, if he don't accept this year, I understand, but he will have to wait till next year. We can't get him on a later date unless something happens and a fight falls off. But this is the only fight we can guarantee him this year. And I was like, he said, but Sean was cool, but he was like, he said he wasn't gonna hold it against me if I did turn it down. But I told him, I was like, man, let me get back to the gym and let me see how my legs are gonna hold up, because my legs was pretty banged up from the Kama fight. And I got back to the gym and did 3 5s and felt like I was dying. And I was like, tell him I'll take it. But I was pretty nervous about it, man, because every time I got on the mats from the time I'd caught COVID till I fought, it was just, I mean, absolutely just miserable. I mean, my lungs was squealing. I mean, I couldn't do anything without my lungs just killing me. But, I got my lungs under me, got them better. And we went out to Vegas, did the promo video, and it was, parts of it was real cool, man. I mean, but like I said, that Contender Series day was just a nerve wracking day for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was,
yeah, that would be easy.
yeah.
So, like, with all this, the pathway that you're on, like, yeah, it seems like last year you fought almost every 3 months. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
You had a February and then like
February, June, and October.
October. Okay. So yeah, almost like once a quarter.
Yep.
And for 24, you got this fight coming up, so we'll be in April, but it's your first one this year.
It is. Correct.
Okay. And depending on how that goes, like, do you have any idea? Like, do you have any notice? I don't know how it works nowadays. So like some guys have like a X fight guarantee, but where are you at with all that?
This will actually be my last fight on my Contender Series contract. I won the Contender Series, and I reckon most of the time it's a pretty well standard 4 fight deal, to my knowledge. And this will be my 4th fight, so my contract will actually be up. But I'm gonna go in there and get the job done, and hopefully they'll re-sign me and pay me a little bit more money, man. I'm
for sure.
Always open for more money.
Well, you're in that process of transitioning from, like, is this going to be, a guy that's going to be in the UFC for a while, or, there's always that, right? And it can be an up and down. I'm curious though, with, from you said in 17 is when you gave your life to Christ.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. 2017. So you're 7 years into that. So you've had this transformation, would you say, for, pretty much your professional career in fighting?
I would say most of it, man. But some of us stray away. I'd sit in church whenever I felt like I was just on fire for God. I'd sit in church and I'd hear people giving their testimony, and they'd talk about how close they was to God. But then in their story, they'd talk about drifting away from him, and I'd sit there and I'd listen to him, and I'm like, man, how could you ever drift away from him? He's so wonderful. And then, later on in life, I kind of found myself pretty far from God. And, I went through a lot of struggles with it, man. It was just lustful worldly desires, man. Like just it don't take much to and it don't take much or take long, man, and you can find yourself pretty far from God.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ain't been perfect by all means, nowhere near it, but it's been like I said, he's stuck with me, even whenever I was kind of, drifted away from him, he still looked after me and kept me safe, and it's just been wild, man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like that comment that I made as far as like choice, good choices or bad choices. Life's hard. Uh yeah, we all do our best, and there's seasons where you're just grinding, right? Like you're just training, like we're here working, we're trying to build clients and do all the stuff that we're doing with our media business. But yeah, it's easy to get distracted. And anytime you create distraction, just like in your training, right? Like if you wanted to relax a little bit and, have a couple too many cheat meals, you're going to feel the effects of that, right? If you don't stay 100% disciplined. So, but then reeling it back in. And I think that's like the beauty of it. Like, I don't think that our lives were meant to be put under a magnifying glass, because then, nobody likes micromanagement, especially from a faith standpoint. It's by his grace, right? So,
Amen.
anyways, so just another little encouragement there. So, like with everything that you're doing, like diet wise, like you're obviously a pretty lean guy, but is that just what type of meal plan, or would you say that's one of a lot of guys I've talked to aside from the training, because obviously it sounds like you can just go and as long as you're not sick or something's not giving you a challenge, you can just get there and physically show up. But
Yes, sir.
how's the diet side of it been for you?
I'm ready for a cheeseburger.
uh
It's been I hired a dietitian for my last fight in Abu Dhabi, Mr. Mark Hernandez, and dude, that guy's completely changed my life. I mean, I got weighed in over at Abu Dhabi, and I think we weighed in at 9 in the morning, and we had to do ceremonial weigh-ins at 5 p.m. And by the time we got ceremonial weigh-ins, man, I was like, I felt so good. I was ready to fight. Whereas before I hired the dietitian, I wasn't doing good. Like my fight before that, when I lost to Chepe, man, I didn't, man, I felt terrible on fight day. My diet wasn't good at all. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I knew how to eat healthy and stuff, but like I guess fight week was the biggest thing I was struggling with. Like I was cutting all my carbs out, pretty much just eating meat and cheese, and didn't really know how to water load properly. And I was doing my weight cuts weird. So when I fought at 170 at the beginning of my pro career, and even fought up, did catch weight at 180, but like I didn't go to 155 again until I fought Kama Worthy right before the Contender Series fight. And when I cut weight for Kama Worthy, I'd cut weight pretty early in the evening, and then I stayed up all night just miserable, man. I couldn't sleep, and I was like, man, I wished I'd just cut weight at night if I was gonna be up all night. I wished I'd just waited and did it start at like 12 a.m. or something like that.
sure.
And so I tried it. I tried that method, and it seemed like it worked a little bit, like, but I started getting like it started making me sick. The no sleep and staying up like that, like I would dry heave. I think whenever I fought Chepe, I think I dry heaved off and on for like 3 or 4 hours, man, just leading up to the weigh-in. Probably from like 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. that morning, I was just dry heaving. And like I said, I didn't really know what to do leading up to the weight cut. Like the day before I'd cut, like I wouldn't eat anything, maybe a couple of spoonfuls of peanut butter with minimal water. Whereas now, I mean, like this last time, I was drinking water and I was eating carbs and all kinds of stuff on like fight week. I mean, I had carbs this morning, not many, but
Yeah, yeah.
not many, but
Just enough to take the edge
yeah,
off.
just enough to make you want some more. But
What do you normally walk weight wise when you're not like before you're cutting?
I usually hang out about 178.
Okay.
Yeah, about 178 to 182, somewhere in there. Like, and then whenever I think I've been I stayed at about 177 up until just about 3 weeks ago. I mean, I've been pretty heavy throughout this process, but
So your cuts usually about 23, 25 pounds, somewhere in there.
well, with the water load that he's got me doing, I mean, I won't have to actually like sit in a sauna and sweat out, but maybe like I'm hoping like anywhere from like 6 to 9 pounds, something like that. But I mean, in the past, I mean, I've did some. But the biggest one I did was 26 pounds in 2 days, and that one about killed me. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I didn't about kill me. But
Well, there's certain guys that you see they have it down to a science, and probably because they've hired dietitians or they have enough experience with it. And then there's just genetics, right? There's some guys their weight cut's not that big of a deal. And then I've seen guys that have like a 30-pound weight cut, and they're trying to do it in a week, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
yeah,
It's crazy. It's a whole different game. Well, with you got the fight and everything coming up, but like outside of that, what do you do for fun? Like, this week's a big week for you, and I appreciate you taking time to be here. But when you're not, booked for a fight, what's keeping you busy at home, or what do you got going on besides training and throwing hands?
I mean, we get together with a few buddies and stuff, get together and watch the fights, and just spend time with family and friends. But I think probably my favorite thing to do is probably hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love hunting. I mean, I've hunted for 19 years, and it's probably been it's a way for me to get out and kind of disassociate from everything, kind of disconnect from the troubles. If I got any troubles going on in life or anything like that, just give me a mental break and just a clarity to get out there and spend some time with God and nature. But I love hunting, man.
That's awesome. So, were you able to hunt this past year? I know you fought in October.
A little bit, not really.
Not really.
Not
Do you
really.
got to hunt whitetails or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that you know Dwayne, you have to come out to Colorado and do like an elk hunt or something like that.
Man, we went up to his place yesterday to let the little ones hunt eggs and eat dinner and stuff. And man, we probably seen 15 to 20 on the way out. I rolled down the window and I said, "You boys better be glad I ain't got a bow."
Have you seen elk in person before?
No, yesterday was the first time ever, man. I was like a little kid. I was like, "Dude, that's an elk."
Yeah, isn't that nuts?
Dude, it is.
Are they starting to get velvet now, the bulls? Like, or were they all just cows? Did you see any antlers?
They look like they're still hard horned. I don't know if they did. When did they shed up here?
They usually drop in March. So if there was ones that had racks on them, they'll be dropping like any day. But it's getting pretty late for them.
Yeah, they was several of them that still had the racks, and they didn't look like they were still hard racks. I actually was talking to the gentleman we rode over with, and I was like, "Man, I'm gonna go knock on these people's doors and stuff and see if I can at least shed hunt." I doubt
Yeah.
anybody ever would let you hunt, but like as far as going looking for some sheds, man, I probably could get a couple people to say yes.
Do you shed hunt back home?
I have a little bit. This whenever we get back from the fight, I'm gonna go out and really try to like really do it this year. It's kind of been like looking around here and there, but I ain't never really got serious into it. But I'd like to as soon as this fight's over with, get back home and look around.
Yeah, one of the guys that we grew up with, his name's Ian Berg. He did like Ring of Fire stuff and just like amateur fighting stuff here in Colorado. And we did a video with him. I forgot exactly what it was on, but he's like kind of like is it Dan Henderson? I think he said something about like I never worry about taking a week off training camp if I'm going to go swap it out with hunting, like in the Rockies, just because of the elevation, the heavy weight packs, and all that kind of stuff. Most guys are pretty dialed in. They're not thinking about anything else but the fight. But it's incredible the type of shape. It can at least build endurance. Probably won't. Once you get to a certain level, you know how to throw your hands and stay disciplined. But hunting is incredible, man. And then mentally, you can just get away from everything and shut it down.
Yeah, you can. I really hope at some point we can come up here and get off in them mountains and get lost and try to get hold of a good bull, man. That'd be ultimate one of my bucket lists for sure.
Well, I know a guy.
I know a guy that'll go.
So aside from I saw the Peak Nation, but what are you working on like for yourself or branding outside of the UFC? Like what are things that you're focused on, or maybe 5-10 years down the road that you want to try to build like through your story? I don't know what your plans are, but just kind of interested to hear a little bit about that.
Just I'm still putting a lot of thought into it on which direction I really want to go. I mean, I've obviously pretty close to the Lord and stuff, so I feel like eventually, I'll have to, maybe, do something in that area of life, something for God. But, me and a friend of mine back home, we kind of got into messing with protection dogs, and I've got a couple of Malinois back home, and I really like messing with them a lot too, and stuff like that. So, we'll see. I'm still got a couple ideas, maybe business related. I'd like to maybe get some fight apparel, stuff like that, fight related going on, and You know, who knows? Maybe open up a small gym or something one of these days.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you're focused on your own, fighting career, like there's opportunity to think that you want to do stuff, but then it's like, what's gonna, anytime you give something more, it takes away from this. But obviously, you've been given a lot of opportunity, and I think that's great. One thing I would love for anyone that's like listening that may be going through a tough time, or if you've resonated with anything that you said about like your past, like what would be some encouraging words that you would offer somebody that's been going through a tough time or they're just trying to figure it out?
Nay, and all these things for more, for we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. I mean that about Romans 8:37. Um, I tried to conquer a lot of things in my life and been to rehab multiple times. I mean, I went through so much stuff and I couldn't ever really conquer it. And ultimately, you know, like I said earlier, God helped me conquer that. And just another thing I would say is like, don't focus so much on what everybody else in the world is thinking about you. You know, like I spent a lot of time kind of just beating myself up on what maybe the community and stuff, their opinions of me and everything, and it kind of just kept me going down that path because I carried, you know, so much guilt. But
The MMA community or like your
like
home
just
community?
home community and stuff, like I feel like we tie so much things up and what others feel and think about us, and it ultimately kind of it hinders us from maybe being who we're supposed to be. I would tell them people to focus on yourself and be humbly proud of yourself. You know, I don't get to a point where you're so proud of yourself that you know you're thinking you did it. You know, because pride cometh before the fall. But I do think it is good to have a sense of accomplishment and be proud of yourself. But yeah, tune out what the world thinks of you because they're going. It literally don't matter what you do. You can do the best you can, and people still gonna have negative opinions about you, and they're still gonna say you're not doing what you should be doing. But like, focus on your relationship with Jesus, and tough times gonna come, but tough times don't last. But you know, tough people do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, you have like a peace about you. Like I can feel it. Like I can tell that you've been through a lot. I can just see that by looking in your eyes, bro. And like I think, like, because when you meet like one of your own, or and I'm not, well, we have the alignment, like, obviously with our faith, but we've also probably have a lot of alignment with hurt and pain, struggle. But you've found a way to harness it, even outside from fighting. Like that's cool. Like I wish you the best this weekend, but even more, there's something there that's like stronger. And I think that it's kind of like finding that bull, in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, man, how did that happen? And there's a lot of times where people ask that question to me, and I'm like, I don't know. I just go out and I do my thing, and man upstairs looks out for me, and like even just talking with Dwayne, he brought you here. So I think that there's a lot of things. There's the universe, the way that God works is that He brings people together and wants to bring people together, and I really hope that our listeners, people that are listening to this, can get something from your story because I think when people just see like on TV or anybody for that matter, they're like, oh well, that guy just has a lot of success, and they'd have no idea of some of the things
Yeah.
that you've been through, so I think that there's a lot there for sure. So what's happening for you after this fight, as we kind of wrap up, I'd love to try to, push people to whatever you got going on, if it's your social media and some of the things that, you're trying to develop or figure out, like, what's the best way for people to check you out and see what you got going on?
I mean, everybody can follow me on Instagram at Trevor Peek MMA. I think my tag on Twitter is like Trevor Peek _ MMA. But yeah, as far as plans after this fight, man, that cheeseburger.
The cheeseburger. Oh, there's a place across the street. No, I won't tempt you.
Nah, I'm gonna go home and I got some things I need to attend to back home. But there's this camp's been beautiful for me, man. But here at the end, I've had a couple of things that's been kind of out of my control that's went on back home that I want to get home and try to resolve. And it's hurt me a little bit with my focus, a few days here and there. But for the most part, I've been able to still be dialed in, even with some of the things going on back home. But want to get home and get them things resolved as quick as I can.
And are you in Tennessee now?
Yes, sir. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to train at Agogi Combatives in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they had a they had a little office space that they ended up letting me move into. So I've still got all my stuff there. I've been living at Agogi for the last little bit now, and shout out to Matt Harris and Larry Scott and Sterling Peace, all my coaches back home, man. They've been such a blessing to me, man. Like, whenever for instance, whenever I was taking the Comma Worthy fight, like I was still confined to the state. Well, I was able to leave Alabama, but I had to stay there and I stay inside the state, and then I got permission to leave and everything, and actually go to the gym, and they cut me off of probation 4 years early and everything. But like Matt Harris, like man, I can't thank that guy enough for everything he's done for me, man. He's sacrificed a lot and helped me out a whole lot, and even for that last fight, man, I think me and him spent like 220 something hours together in private lessons and stuff getting ready for that fight. But like, just shout out to all my guys back home for helping me out and stuff, man. But yeah, I've been in Chattanooga for last, I think, 2 years, something like that.
Okay. When you would you wait for a fight camp to come back to Colorado again? Like, or is that gonna, or are you gonna try to build this into your routine too?
I'd like to build it into my routine. I know Dwayne's got a big seminar and stuff coming up here pretty soon. I'm
June 1st, right?
Yes, sir, definitely coming back for that. But I love it up here, man. Like I said, I feel like Dwayne and his and whole entire family. I feel like they feel like family to me. Really. I mean that with every fiber in my being. It's been such a wonderful thing, man. I'm gonna get emotional talking about it if I keep going with it, but it's been. I never lost the belief that I could become a champion, man. I mean, I've just got too many attributes and too many God given abilities and talents and toughness that I feel like I have the qualities of being a champion, but like just so much stuff kind of went on that's like kind of broke my spirit and everything about maybe the dream of being a champion. But coming up here and training with Dwayne and being around his family and his just the dojo and everybody I've been around, like it's really inspired and uplifted my spirit, and like I really want to be a champion again. Not only do I feel like I could become a champion, like I want to again. So like I definitely will be coming up here as much as possible, and just looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to bust our butt to try to get this podcast out this week. Only because, like before your fight, it would be great timing. So we'll try to do that. If you're listening to it afterwards, I apologize. It just is what it is. But I can't thank you enough for being here, brother. Everyone check out Trevor Peek. And I'm excited to see where you go in the fighting game. There's that one part, but I'm excited to see what you do with life, man. I think that there's a lot of things with your story where you could be a huge impact. So thank you so much,
sir. Man. Thank you for having me. And it's been fun, man. I appreciate you sharing some of your testimony with me and stuff beforehand. That's being vulnerable and open up to me as well. It's been cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. Well, maybe if you come back out here in June, we can run it back and do the highlight on what went down.
Yeah. We'll talk about sleeping old Charlie.
Well, and we'll go get a cheeseburger too.
Make it a double.
Make it a double. Right on, brother.